Hello folks, and welcome back to another marvelous anime video. These days, anime and manga are a huge part of our pop culture, with some series even attracting a lot of mainstream attention. For many of us though, shows like Naruto, Dragon Ball, and Gundam, to name a few, have been an integral part of our life, having grown up watching these shows. Due to this, we share an intrinsic bond with this medium. However, not everyone is as fortunate as those of us who had access to every single piece of anime on the planet, especially in this day and age of the internet. Several anime have been censored or banned over the years in various countries, making them inaccessible to a large segment of society. Since time immemorial, any piece of content that has been considered to be inflammatory, vile, or against the sensibilities of the time has been banned or censored. We would all love to live in a world without any censorship, where people are given the freedom to choose what they like or dislike. However, sometimes censorship is a necessary evil to protect the young and the impressionable from going down a darker path. This is not to say that this tool hasn't been abused by those in powerful positions, as we'll see in this video regarding certain cases. In today's marvelous video, we bring you 15 animes that have been banned in various countries across the world for a number of reasons. From striking fear into the hearts of dictators to hurting religious sentiments, these animes either continue to remain banned or have been banned at a certain point in these places. You must be thinking that these animes must be filled with gore and violence, but hold on to your horses, as some of these titles will catch you completely by surprise. There might even be some of your favorite anime on this list, so be sure to watch this video right till the very end. As a note, we're not going to include all the anime that's been banned in China, as that would make this video impossibly long. Just to give context, China has banned over 30 animes recently, which includes some of the biggest names to have come out over the last few decades. What we do have for you is a carefully curated list of anime whose content ranges from harmless to the most disgusting in the world and everything in between. So strap on in and get ready to discover how and why these 15 animes were deemed worthy to get the ban hammer. Let's begin. Tokyo Ghoul, China and Russia. Tokyo Ghoul is a dark fantasy manga and anime series written by Japanese manga artist Sui Ishida. It would receive a 12-episode anime adaptation under Studio Pyro and would air from July to September 2014. Tokyo Ghoul was one of the most popular animes to come out that year and was highly regarded by both fans and critics alike. The story is set in an alternate universe where humans are devoured for food by creatures called ghouls. The kicker here is these are no rotting and decrepit mindless monsters as you might think because of their name. Ghouls are extremely intelligent beings whose appearance matches that of any ordinary human unless they're using their powers. They live among human beings and blend in perfectly, making them exceptionally difficult to sniff out. The central character, Kaneki, is an individual who, due to circumstances, is caught at a crossroads, having become a half-ghoul himself. The story follows his attempts to retain his humanity, all the while fighting the cravings for human flesh and his ghoulish instincts. As he navigates the steep path and struggles to maintain his moral compass, Kaneki begins to unravel the delicate yet fractious relationship that ghouls share with human society. There are those, of course, both on the human and ghoul's side, who for various reasons don't share his point of view and want him dead. The anime deals with profound human themes like life, family, existential crisis, and loneliness. Tokyo Ghoul's anime adaptation is considerably mature, even though it is slightly censored and toned down compared to the manga. The series is filled with visceral violence that is centered around cannibalistic themes. Despite being one of the highest-grossing animes and mangas globally, it found itself in hot waters both in China and Russia. The Chinese Ministry of Culture banned Tokyo Ghoul and 38 other anime and manga titles in June 2015, citing them to be unfit for consumption, especially by the youth. In Russia, it was banned by the St. Petersburg justice system, which deemed the anime to be extremely violent, filled with cruelty and murder, stating that it could incite the youth into recreating the violent acts they witnessed in this series. However, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Sony, who distributes the anime through Crunchyroll, has shut down its services in the country, which means that regardless of the ban, fans can't enjoy Tokyo Ghoul, at least not legally. This is, however, not the first or the last extremely popular show that will feature on this video, as you'll see. Pokémon, Saudi Arabia and Qatar. While you might understand why Tokyo Ghoul was banned in a couple of countries, we're sure you're at least mildly shocked to see Pokémon on this list. This global franchise has spawned countless video games, mangas, animes, and even live-action films, and it's widely considered to be geared towards children and young adults. Have a guess at why it was banned, and if you're thinking it has something to do with animal activist groups, you're wrong. Pokemon has, in fact, been banned in multiple countries, starting with Saudi Arabia due to religious reasons. In 2001, the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia issued a fatwa, which is an Islamic edict banning not just the anime and manga, but the entire Pokemon franchise. The reason they gave was that Pokemon, which is centered around the collection and battling of these fictional monsters, was too similar to gambling, which is forbidden by Islam. They also stated that Pokemon had very obvious Zionist symbology in it, especially Squirtle, which they believed to be a representation of a symbol that promoted Zionism. Countries like Egypt and Qatar would also soon follow suit and place similar blanket bans on the franchise. In recent years, this ban is said to have been relaxed a bit, but the fact still remains that it had a major impact on Pokemon's popularity in the region. However, it's not just the Middle East that has interpreted the series in a negative light. Many in the West also believed that Pokemon was Satanist in nature and expressed concerns regarding having their children exposed to it. This was brilliantly parodied in the TV series South Park in their hilarious 1999 episode named Chinpokomon. As you can see, as stated earlier by us, you don't have to be bloody, gory, or sexually explicit to find yourself under the ban hammer and make it onto our list for today. Record of Ragnarok, India. From battling pocket monsters to battling gods, let's now talk about why the mildly popular Netflix anime series Record of Ragnarok finds itself banned in India. Record of Ragnarok is based on the eponymous manga series written by Shinya Umimura and Takumi Fukui that pits gods from various pantheons against the most famous and infamous humans to have ever existed in a tournament to decide the fate of mankind. Every millennium, the gods hold a council to judge humanity to see if they're worthy of existing. However, after 7 years of human history filled with violence and abuse, the gods decree humanity to be irredeemably corrupt and decide to end them. The Valkyrie, Brunhilde, manages to convince the gods to give humanity one final fighting chance, to which the gods agree. It is decided that if humanity manages to beat the gods 7 out of 13 times in battle, then mankind will be spared. With the Valkyries binding their fates to these chosen humans called Einherjar by becoming their weapons, humanity makes its last stand. Representing the gods are figures like Shiva, Zeus, and Thor, to name a few, while the humans are represented by the likes of Jack the Ripper, Adam, and Lu Bu. While this makes for a super fun and entertaining setting, the inclusion of the Hindu deity Shiva has caused a series of massive problems in India. It all started when Rajan Zed, the president of the Universal Society of Hinduism, put out a statement asking the creators of Record of Ragnarok to stop what he called the trivialization of Shiva and other Hindu deities. He expressed concern that the manner in which these deities were portrayed in the series would seriously harm the way Hindu religion was viewed by the uninitiated. Netflix, however, ignored his statement and went right ahead with their plans. In Hindu mythology, Shiva is one of the holy trinities, along with Vishnu and Brahma, who are responsible for the creation, nurturing, and destruction of the cosmos. The destruction part falls into Shiva's realm, but the act isn't malicious in nature, but rather a part of the natural cycle of the epochs. His portrayal in the series is somewhat contradictory to this, and hence has ruffled some feathers, like Zed's. We do not, however, believe that it was his statement that got the show banned, as he had previously released similar statements for films such as X-Men Apocalypse, which were ignored by the creators as well. Rather than the show getting banned, we suspect that Netflix itself might have removed it from their listings in India, as the country has very stringent laws against media portraying things that might offend the religious beliefs of its citizens. With the country's population being primarily Hindu, Netflix possibly didn't want to risk further controversy. Shiva is one of the main characters in Record of Ragnarok, so to omit it completely wasn't an option to begin with. This is why we believe that the series will continue to be unavailable in India for the foreseeable future. Hatalia, Access Powers. South Korea. Moving on from the mythological to something more grounded in reality, let's talk about Hatalia, Access Powers. This anime is based on the webcomic of the same name, which was written and illustrated by mangaka Hidesuka Himurua. The series is an allegorical satire on cultures, stereotypes, and political and historical events, using characters to personify real-world countries. The story was initially set around the events of the Second World War, but since then, it's expanded way beyond that. It represents conflicts and interactions between the countries during this time in a lighthearted, comedic fashion. For instance, any war or conflicts between two nations are depicted as a misunderstanding between the characters. As you can see, due to the heavy usage of satire and comedy, some of the more intense moments related to these countries have been somewhat trivialized. This was sure to rub the sentiments of certain people belonging to these countries the wrong way, and it did so. In particular, this anime caused a massive uproar in Korea due to how it was personified in the anime, and in particular, its interaction with the Japan character. The Japanese and the Koreans will share an extremely tense relationship due to Japan's occupation of Korea and the atrocities committed by it during that time. This hostility can be traced even further back in history, going all the way back from the Second War to ancient times. For context, today, Korea and Japan claim the disputed territory called Liancourt Rocks as their own, respectively. When the Korean characters make unsolicited sexual overtures on the Japanese character, it was interpreted by some as the creators using parts of the Japanese character's body to represent real-world places like the Liancourt Rocks to show Korea's alleged forceful and illegal claim. Furthermore, the Korean character is often seen constantly imitating Japan and declaring that anything that the latter liked originated in Korea. Things were so heated that this matter was brought in front of the Special Assembly Committee on Defensive Measures for Liancourt Rocks by Korean Freedom Party Congresswoman Jeong-mi Kyung. She went so far as to call it a crime against all Koreans and urged the Korean government to take drastic diplomatic actions against Japan. The anime for the series that was supposed to be aired by the Japanese TV station Kid Station in Korea was forced to cancel the show despite the Korean character being removed from it. Aside from this, the show would garner further negative press when a group of Prussian and German cosplayers would perform a Nazi salute at Anime Boston, allegedly near a Holocaust memorial. The anime is still loved by fans and is actually a decent watch as long as you understand that it's comedy and not meant to be taken seriously. Kinikuman France. Hatalia, Axis Power, wouldn't be the first or last anime or manga to be banned for its depiction of certain world events and countries. Kinikuman would beat it to the punch when, in 1990, the show was banned from France after airing only 49 of the total 109 episodes of the series. Kinikuman was a harmless, self-aware parody of the iconic Ultraman series written by Yoshinori Nakai and Takashi Shimada, who are collectively known by their pseudonym Yudi Tamago. The show's premise is based upon a galactic pro wrestling scene with lots of over-the-top wrestling moves and slapstick humor. It follows the story of a bumbling comical superhero called Kinikuman, aka Suguru Kiniku, who discovers that he is the long-lost heir of the planet Kiniku. The audience is taken on an extremely funny journey as the clumsy protagonist battles the likes of Ramen Man, Buffalo Man, Zebra, and Big Body in pro wrestling matches to prove himself worthy to sit on his rightful throne. The series was unexpectedly so popular in Japan that it has spawned multiple spin-offs and video games and is constantly referenced in other works of the medium. As you can see by the names of the characters, including Kinikuman, which roughly translates to Muscle Man, they are spoof characters and not meant to be taken too seriously. However, it was in fact one of these same characters that got the anime banned in France. As you know, the world of pro wrestling is full of gimmicks, and that carries over in an even more outlandish fashion in Kinikuman. What rubbed the French government the wrong way was the fact that one of the characters from the show, Brocken Jr.'s gimmick, was wearing a Nazi outfit, and he was supposed to be a Nazi who turned over a new leaf. Obviously, France, due to their traumatic relationship with Nazi Germany, was very stringent regarding the portrayal or depiction of Nazis in any form. Sadly, this led to the series being prematurely shut down. Eventually, Kinikuman changed Brocken's design completely and removed the Nazi swastika and other symbols that tied him to that terrible regime. However, Brocken continues to be absent from certain Kinikuman productions to this day. Kite Norway. While one could argue the case for some of the animes that we mentioned earlier, there's little room to justify the ban on Kite in Norway and other European countries. Kite is an OVA that has been released in 3 versions: a censored version, a director's cut with 15 minutes extra footage, and the original uncut and uncensored version. It tells the story of a young schoolgirl named Sawa, whose parents are killed, leaving her in the care of the 2 detectives investigating the murder, Akai and Kani. It follows her descent into the blood-soaked world of assassins as she is trained to be a hitman by her guardians. At the same time, she is also seen having a sexual relationship with Akai, who is supposed to be a father figure to her after her parents' passing. As if the act of having sex with a minor wasn't bad enough, there is a disturbingly graphic rape scene where Sawa gets raped by Akai. As you can see, these are very strong grounds for any series to be banned. Furthermore, the movie has a very dark overtone with lots of depictions of abuse, both physical and mental, combined with graphic violence. It is one of the hardcore animes that almost takes a sadistic pleasure in putting their audiences through an orgy of violence and depravity. One can't help but feel disturbed by how unabashedly the movie indulges in these themes. The original uncut video may be easier to find now due to the internet, but back in the day, it was almost impossible to get your hands on. Even now, although it's easier to find the uncut versions of the OVA, they're still extremely hard to come by due to limited production and heavy editing. Kite was one of the first animes to really shock the mainstream audiences and governments in the West to realizing that anime could be much more different than the animated adaptations they'd been used to so far. The Norwegian government was one of the first to take notice of the film's graphic nature and immediately made moves to have it removed from their country. Norway, among many other European nations, has extremely strong regulations regarding CSAM, or child sexual assault material, which made it not surprising that the two-part OVA series was instantly banned. This would be followed by other members of the EU not long after. While Kite has faded into some form of obscurity due to the heavy-handed nature of the ban imposed upon it, its impact on the medium and the legislation surrounding it cannot be understated. Puni Puni Poeme, New Zealand. From the dark and dangerous world of Kite, let's move on to something that's relatively more lighthearted. Puni Puni Poeme is a parody of the Maho Shoujo, or magical girl genre, featuring mostly the side characters from the anime Excel Saga manga. The series was originally a running joke within the Excel Saga team, which the director Shinichi Watanabe decided to take to the extreme by turning it into an actual series. The anime follows the story of young Poemi Watanabe, whose dream is to become a famous voiceover artist. What she lacks in skills, Poemi makes up for with her infectious energy and optimism. However, one day she comes home to find her house in ruins along with most of Tokyo and her parents dead at the hands of an alien. She grabs a fish, skins it into a wand, and transforms into the Maho Shoujo Puni Puni Poemi. The anime is laced with scathing satire about all the cliches that lace not just its own genre, but anime in general. It employs an excessive amount of crude and slapstick humor that's not for the thin skin. Not to mention the excessive amount of nudity, which might be okay for some, if not for the fact that the characters are all around 10 years of age. This is where Puni Puni Poemi takes a disturbing turn. In fact, it was outright banned in New Zealand and many other countries for their wanton depiction of minors in a sexual manner. The New Zealand Classification Board banned Puni Puni Poemi because, according to their statement, it supports the exploitation of children and young persons for sexual purposes. Sailor Moon, Saudi Arabia. Staying on the subject of Maho Shoujo animes, let's talk about how the original magical girl anime, Sailor Moon, finds itself on this list today. While Sailor Moon might not be the first anime to come out in its genre, it certainly is the anime that reinvigorated it by pioneering a fresh new direction for the Maho Shoujo animes. What Sailor Moon did was portray a female lead in anime for the first time, with powers and abilities similar to those of her shonen counterparts. The anime took several shonen manga tropes and adapted it into Sailor Moon, completely changing people's perception about the anime and its genre. No longer was the woman a damsel in distress and needed saving, she was a total badass capable of taking on villains on her own and saving the day. Every other Maho Shoujo anime that you can think of that came out after Sailor Moon emulates the formula laid down by it. It would bring in an entirely new audience to the much maligned genre, with men now taking an interest in it, which is without to mention an entire generation of female audiences also taking up anime and manga as a hobby thanks to this show. This series has been studied by anthropologists and experts and has become much more than just an anime or manga. So, for a work of this stature to suddenly find itself banned in Saudi Arabia might leave some of you scratching your heads. The reason that Saudi Arabia has banned Sailor Moon is because there is a blanket ban on any media depicting women as leads of the story or in positions of power in that country. By virtue, of course, not all of the Maho Shoujo animes are banned as well, but Sailor Moon is worth mentioning because of its stature within not just its genre, but anime as a whole. The ban has been somewhat relaxed recently, with Netflix adding a Sailor Moon movie to its listing in Saudi Arabia. However, outside of that one particular instance, the ban still holds strong for the remaining Sailor Moon series and films. Prior to Netflix putting up Sailor Moon Eternal in its library, Toei had for the longest time refused to license the series to Saudi Arabia due to its strict moral codes. Voltzv, Philippines. Let's now turn our eyes to the mech genre, where we find the Super Robot series, Super Electromagnetic Machine Voltzv, or simply Voltzv, that was banned in the Philippines. The story follows the tale of a group of young heroic rebels and warriors who pilot a giant ultramagnetic robot called Voltzv as they make a stand to protect Earth from a sudden alien invasion by a race called the Boazan. What follows is a bitter struggle as the young protagonists deal with the concept of loss, family, and identity crisis, all the while keeping the enemy at bay. The anime had a profound impact on the youth of the Philippines, Indonesia, and Cuba, where the series was greatly celebrated. However, in 1979, when martial law was declared under President Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines, he banned a number of Japanese animes, including Voltzv, citing them to have harmful effects on children. What makes this ban significant is that many believe it had very little to do with Marcos actually worrying about the welfare of his country's youth and had more to do with him being afraid. Afraid of what, you might ask? Well, Voltzv featured themes of rebellion and revolution along with the empowerment of the youth. Marcos might have been afraid that such an anime would incite a revolution against him. For those who say that anime has no impact on the culture of a society or people beyond its entertainment value, the case of Voltzv and the Philippines stands as a direct contradiction to their belief. The children who grew up in this time period are often known as the Voltzv generation. The anime would not see the light of day until Marcos would be removed from power. The series would stay on the air all the way until 2010 in the country, despite the efforts of Congressman Mayo Almario to get it removed from the air in 1999. Attack on Titan, China. Another very big name that made it onto this list is the iconic series Shingeki no Kyojin, or Attack on Titan. This series is the brainchild of Japanese mangaka Hajime Isayama and is set in a post-apocalyptic world where humanity is forced to live behind giant walled cities to protect themselves from colossal humanoids called Titans. The story follows the journey of a young boy named Eren Yeager, who, after witnessing his mother being eaten alive by one of these titans, vows revenge on the creatures, only to find that he himself is a titan as well. What follows is a complex story of youth, discovery, betrayal, and sacrifice. The anime gained worldwide acclaim from both fans and critics alike for its action-packed sequences, along with some dark, hard-hitting tropes that could easily be related to the real world as well. The South Korean magazine Electronic Times even accused the series of having a militaristic message that allegedly reflected the late Shinzo Abe's political leanings. There have also been talks of the series harboring anti-Semitic themes by alluding to the Marlians' prosecution of the Eldians, who were thought to be representative of Jews. Despite these accusations, the country that it would find itself banned in would be China, and for none of the above-mentioned reasons. It would be part of the purge initiated by the CCP's Chinese Ministry of Culture, declaring it to be too violent for young people to see. Due to its militaristic and rebellious nature, the CCP's motivation might have been similar to that of Ferdinand Marcos, but we'll never know. Kodommo Nojikan, United States of America and Japan. Kodommo Nojikan is a relatively unknown anime and manga outside of the controversy it sparked thanks to the nature of its plot and characters. Out of all the countries in the world, anime and manga surprisingly hardly ever face outright bans in America. Kodommo Nojikan earns itself the distinct honor of falling into that category of rare animes for all of the wrong reasons. Written and illustrated by Japanese manga artist Kaworu Wadashiya, Kodommo Nojikan is the story of Daisuke Aoi, a grade school teacher whose biggest worry in life is the fact that Rin Kokone, a female student of his, has a massive crush on him. While this might set off some alarm bells for people, the real kicker is when you get to know the age of the student, which is only 10 years old. Well, initially, Daisuke, along with the audience, believes it to be the mere infatuation of an immature child. Rin starts making aggressive sexual advances on her teacher. The anime adaptation of the series, directed by Eiji Suganuma and produced by Studio Barcelona, immediately faced censorship in its own home country. In particular, two television stations, namely TV Saitama and MyTV, removed it from their broadcasting schedules, while others, like Chiba TV and KBS Kyoto, aired a heavily censored version of the show. Later, the two stations that banned the show revealed that their decision to remove the series from their schedule was heavily influenced by the then recent capture of a notorious pedophile and child pornography director called Takayuki Hosoda, who was an elementary school vice principal. Things didn't fare too well abroad either, with the Los Angeles-based company Seven Seas Entertainment, which held the license for the series' distribution in North America, pulling the plug as well. It has been admonished as poorly veiled child pornography by many critics and fans alike. One of the authors, Kaworu Wadashiya, considered the series' failure, especially abroad, to be due to cultural differences. The fact that it was received the way it was, even at home, would make us beg to differ. High School DXD, New Zealand. Another anime that fell foul in certain parts of the world due to the age of their characters, though not as egregiously as the anime we just spoke about, is High School DXD. The plot is typical of an anime centered around harem and eki tropes. The protagonist is a lecherous high school student named Issei Hyodo who dreams of creating his own harem. However, when he's killed on the first date he's ever had and resurrected by a devil posing as his classmate, things begin to take a wild turn for him. Issei discovers that his high school is not an ordinary school, it's a place where both demons and angels gather to study. As the bumbling, idiotic Issei stumbles through the story, he comes across another highly sexualized female high schooler who, due to plot armor, falls for his charms. While the plot is nothing worth writing home about, it's been praised and received relatively well by many people due to its soundtrack and art style. This, however, wasn't enough to save it from the wrath of New Zealand's Film and Literature Classification, OFLC, which classified it as objectionable for featuring suggestive and nude visuals of characters who were quite clearly still underage. They said that the series was exploitative of minors and stated that it encouraged the pursuit of minors as viable sexual partners, due to which they enforced the ban. Considering the content of the series, it's hard to argue against this decision. The ban was reversed to an R16 parental guidance rating in 2022. Osumo Matsuan, Japan. Unlike the last few animes on this list, this series was not banned for any excessive violence, perversion, or sexual content. Osumo Matsuan is a comedy series based on the 1962 manga series Osumo Matsuan, written by Fuji Akatsuka. The story follows the daily comical lives of the identical sextuplet siblings of the Matsuno clan, who've all grown up to be NEETs. Unlike in the original manga, the anime adaptation depicts the characters as being 10 years older. Now, you must be wondering how on earth a comedy series receives the ban hammer if it doesn't have any of the things that were prevalent in the other anime and manga we mentioned earlier. To cut a long story short, the reason behind Osumo Matsuan's troubles was copyright infringement. The series constantly parodies popular animes like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Yowamushi Pedal, and Sailor Moon, to name a few. While parody itself is not grounds for a copyright strike, Osumo Matsuan relies heavily on it to engage the audience. Additionally, the properties that it's parodying do not belong to Studio Pierrot. Due to Japan's copyright laws being extremely stringent, the very first episode of the series was instantly banned. The silver lining in all of this is the fact that despite the pilot being banned, the rest of the anime is still available for the Japanese audience to watch. Death Note, Russia. In the same trial that banned Tokyo Ghoul and Inuyashiki, the wildly popular supernatural psychological thriller anime Death Note was banned in Russia as well. According to reports by the Moscow Times, the persecution played several episodes from the show to make its point, leading to the court deciding that every episode contained cruelty, murder, and violence. An expert from the St. Petersburg Academy of Postgraduate Pedagogical Education went on record to state that Death Note was potentially dangerous for a modern child. While the ruling actually only bans the screening of Death Note from 2 websites, the ban could easily be interpreted by Russia's censorship agency as a more blanket prohibition. The testimony of the experts and the court ruling backed the sentiment of the Russian government, who deemed that Death Note would incite other young adults to mimic the violence shown in the series. The very nature of these rulings is somewhat skewed, as Death Note is quite clearly an anime geared towards a much more mature audience. What someone's child consumes, especially through the internet, should be the sole responsibility of the parents. To ban some of the most iconic series while stating that it would be harmful to children when said shows are not meant for children seems puzzling. Death Note is the creation of Sugumi Oba and follows the story of a young man called Yagami Light who attains a supernatural notebook that has the ability to kill anyone whose name is written inside. As the series tackles complex moral dilemmas set inside intricately woven schemes, it's one of the best animes to come out in the last few decades. Death Note is one of the largest selling animes and mangas to date, and rightfully so. Thankfully, Death Note is available in most countries outside of Russia and China. Midori, the girl in the freak show, globally. Based on the controversial manga series written and illustrated by Suhiro Maruo called Shoujo Tsubaki, this is perhaps the most vile entry on this list. It's perhaps the most extreme example of an eroguro work that focuses on sexual corruption, decadence, and the grotesque. The manga was adapted into film by Hiroshi Harada in 1992 under the title Midori, the Girl in the Freak Show. The plot has no redeeming qualities and has been known to have sickened fans to the point that most copies of the film were destroyed. It follows the story of a young schoolgirl called Midori who lives with her terminally ill mother after her father abandoned both of them. Midori tries to earn a living by selling flowers on the street when she is approached by a stranger who offers to help her if she wants. When she returns home that day, she finds that her mother has died. With nowhere else to go and no one to turn to, she takes up the stranger's offer and arrives at the Red Cat Circus, a freak show. What follows is a nightmarish journey through the remainder of the film, where Midori is subjected to all sorts of horrendous abuse, sexually, physically, and mentally, by the deformed members of the circus troupe. Under such circumstances, one would expect the protagonist to make some sort of an escape or there to be a redeeming arc, but there's nothing like that to be found here. Midori takes on the role of the abused and the abuser as she falls deeper into the abyss. This movie is a bleak peek into the deranged and dark nature of the human psyche. Outside of the fact that this movie contains gross imagery and violence perpetrated on a minor, there is also a graphic animal abuse on full display. What makes it additionally disturbing is the fact that Midori is equally responsible for half the atrocities in this film, as it completely subverts the idea of a minor and a protagonist in the minds of the audience. The Girl in the Freak Show is perhaps the only movie in this video that has been universally blacklisted, and rightfully so. Marvelous verdict! As we approach the end of this video, one thing that we learned is that to be banned, the material of the film doesn't always have to be explicit. With lighthearted shows like Pokemon and Kinikuman making it into this video, it becomes glaringly obvious that it doesn't take much for a show to get banned. Even the most iconic and your favorite shows, like the aforementioned Pokemon, Death Note, Attack on Titan, and even Sailor Moon, aren't safe from censorship. One thing that this video does prove, we believe, is that anime and manga is more than just entertainment. They deeply affect humanity on a psychological level and a societal level as well. If this weren't so, there would be no reason for these animations to be banned, as they are technically not real. The naysayers who say that anime is for children or a waste of time have all been proven wrong here. If it were really as the detractors of this medium believe it to be, then why have governments and dictators gone to such lengths to censor them? The point of this video, in a larger sense, is to show not just a list of banned animes, but the impact this medium has on society as a whole. There are a host of other animes and mangas that we have not mentioned in this video, so if we've missed out on any that you find worth mentioning, do let us know in the comments. Also, let us know which anime on this list you were the most surprised to find out was banned. For now though, our time together is once more at an end. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the rest of our channel where we cover all your favorite animes and manga. Thank you for making it to the end of this video with us. We hope to see you soon again in the next one. Until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.